They have a slogan, and I've used it now in just day-to-day life, but they say, glad to be here. You might have heard me say it a couple of times. In a debrief, sometimes debriefs can be harsh. If you just had a horrible flight and you really messed up, you're going to own it, and people are going to let you know you messed up. At the end of that, whoever says that, when you say, hey, but I'm glad to be here, that's like taking, responsibility that, yep, that was horrible, but I'm just glad I'm here and I'm going to make it better. So also another cool thing, and that does stem from some of the Blue Angels and the past bosses of the Blue Angels, but I love that because as bad as something sucks or as horrible it is, there's good in it. And if you see that, you'll climb through it.
Life is a marathon at a sprinter's pace. What do I mean? Well, we do have time to adjust and watch the lay of the land unfold, but we don't have time to sit and wait for things to come to us, because they won't. You're the one in charge of your destiny. What you make of yourself with the time you have on this planet is in your control. Yes, shit happens, but how we react to this shit is controllable. What I've learned so far is to live life urgently, let go of chasing perfection. Never wait for the right time because it's never the right time. To be grateful for what I have and how far I've come, and to come from love as often as I possibly can. I am human. Get emotional and make mistakes.
Now I got rollies all in rotation. Hop on a jet just to take a vacation. Remember the moments was trapped in the basement. Now the hard work is all taking me places. Water on bed like we trapped in the matrix. Bet on myself and go ball out in Vegas. Living a life like I'm rich and I'm famous. Don't see the grind that I know that it came with. Oh, I ain't make it this far for myself. I had to prove to everybody else. I had to set them straight.
Hey there, I'm Kevin LaRosa. I'm an aerial coordinator and motion picture stunt pilot. And today on Live Through Love, we're going to talk about Gun Maverick and the work I did on the movie, as well as some of the lessons about aviation that we can apply in our day-to-day life.
I had to go demonstrate. I had to set them straight. They hate when you elevate, elevate, elevate. They hate when you elevate, elevate, elevate. Yeah, they hate when you elevate,
Kevin, thank you for joining us here, coming to the studio, visiting us in Santa Monica.
Thank you for having me. Honored to be here.
Yeah, man. So let's just dive in. Who are you?
I'm a motion picture aerial coordinator and stunt pilot and camera pilot. So production studios hire me to be responsible for the aerial cinematography that they want to obtain. It can be helicopter, it can be jet-based, drone-based. I take them through the conceptual phases, storyboarding. We make that stuff into reality. I figure out how to do it legally, safely, and make it incredible. So that's my job as an aerial coordinator. But the fun part is I get to fly. And that's my true love. So as a camera pilot, I not only fly the camera on jets, helicopters, and airplanes, but I also get to fly behind the camera. There's times where I'm flying a bad guy helicopter through downtown LA or chasing a car or, flying a jet low level on a movie. That stuff is super fun. And I love doing it all.
So can I be just immersed in my movie? There goes Kevin.
Absolutely. If you see an aircraft on camera, the cool thing is it's a very niche business, very small world. There's really only about 10 of us in the U.S. that do what we do, including my father, by the way. I'm second generation aerial coordinator. And there's not many people worldwide. So when you watch a movie and you see the camera flying through the air or you see a cool helicopter or jet flying, chances are it could be me.
That's amazing. My follow-up question was how'd you get into flying? But obviously you're second generation, so your dad inspired that.
Yep.
But what does it take to, like, I know there's hours of work and practice and schooling and keeping your license up to date, but like, let's go into what does it really take to get to that level, get to your point?
That's a good question. I'm actually a third generation pilot. My grandfather flew in the military. My dad, a pilot his entire career, including a stunt pilot, motion picture pilot. But I got the love of aviation at a very young age. So as a little boy, there wasn't anything else I wanted to do except to be a stunt pilot and a movie pilot. I wanted to do what my dad did. And as a little boy, I got the love for aviation, and there was nothing else that I wanted to do. The running joke in my family is like little kids will fly models around the house and make airplane noises. Well, I did that, but I also had the camcorder and I was flying them on camera. Like I knew I wanted to fly camera. That's an art. So my love and passion is mixing filmmaking and aviation. That's my favorite thing in the entire world. So to be proficient and safe and current for what I do for a living, I think there's a perfect recipe for that. My dad gave me a piece of advice when I was a teenager. I'd been working in the film industry as a teenager, not as a pilot yet, but I was supporting him, driving the field truck, cleaning the windows, earning my keep because I wanted to do what he did. And he pulled me aside one day and he said exactly what a teenager who knows everything in the world would not want to hear. And he said, "Bud, you got to go be your own pilot. You're going to have to leave the industry you love doing because nobody will trust you if you're just a junior." And I'm a Kevin LaRosa II. But no one will trust you if you're just my son and you want to do what I do. So go out there in the world, go make mistakes, go learn, go be your own person. Hard advice, best advice of my life. I always stayed in the industry on my vacation days and flew for him and did stuff, but I had real jobs, flying jobs. I flew traffic watch airplanes in LA every single day. I flew news helicopters, medical helicopters. I flew private jets, you name it. I did tons of these jobs. And every time I did a job, I loved every one of them. And I progressed myself naturally. And I knew that I was only building the experience and the lessons I needed to become what I eventually wanted to become. And that was thanks to him. My debt of gratitude to him was to get me to make that decision and do that. And I think it was around 26 or 27 years of age. I had about 5,500 hours. And I was working with him a bunch and I was getting busy and I was having trouble taking time off from my real jobs. And I knew it was time. And I made that leap of faith. And I'll never forget it. And I'll never look back, but I do look back at what I learned and my lessons because that's what makes us who we are today. And now when I get hired by a production company as an independent contractor to be their pilot, they know that they're hiring somebody that is tried, tested, has experience, has learned from his mistakes, and it can be someone to keep them safe and represent them. So to answer your question, proficiency is huge. I fly every aircraft every year. I train in every aircraft I fly every year, so I'm proficient in them. Obviously, safety. My job as an aerial coordinator is to make sure we're following the FAA regulations, not breaking anything. So you got to be pretty knowledgeable with that. But here's the real kicker. You have to be an aviator. My dad and his dad always taught him that there's pilots and there's aviators. Now, pilots are great and they can be safe. We fly with them all day long. But then there's those aviators who just feel the aircraft. You don't have to be book smart and know every single number and every single rivet and screw on that aircraft. But if that aircraft, you can feel it and it talks to you and you're an extension of that aircraft, you're going to fly it second nature. And that allows me to focus on also the creative aspect of filming. So if anyone wanted to do what I do, I would say you have to be a consummate professional and an expert at aviation and know your aircraft and be an amazing aviator. And at the same time, there's that other aspect, my other love of understanding cinematography and lenses and camera movement and all of that. So mix that together, you end up with what I do.
You end up with a you.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm hearing a couple things with all of that is your dad told you you've got to go become you so that you're essentially never in his shadow.
Exactly.
It's a beautiful piece of advice.
Yeah. For anybody in any career.
And then it's the long-term vision. You had this long-term vision of what you wanted to do. And it took a really long road to get there.
Yep.
Right? No one's an overnight success.
And not a straight path either. Lots of zigzagging and mistakes and how am I going to get there? But you get there. If you stay driven and motivated and you keep that vision, you get there.
Mm-hmm. Super cool. So what is your favorite thing to fly?
I get asked that question a lot. I'm lucky that I fly a lot of different aircraft. I'm rated in C-130s and Blackhawks and Little Birds and a lot of civilian aircraft as well. Very fortunate in the business I fly that I get to do that. And I always say I break it into two categories. So my favorite helicopter is the one that is my tool of choice, if you will, for flying camera. The art of flying camera, as I like to say, and that'd be the A-Star. So it's a very common helicopter. We ride on them when we're in Hawaii, sightseeing or in Las Vegas. We see them flying around the sky with the police. Mm-hmm. It's a very, very common platform, but it's very maneuverable. It's very utilitarian. It's got a nice open platform design. It's super powerful and maneuverable. Mm-hmm. And when you stick a camera on there, it becomes a very cool camera movement tool. So that's my favorite helicopter. Mm-hmm. My favorite airplane in the world would definitely be a North American P-51 Mustang. That's a World War II fighter. My grandfather flew them. My dad owned one for a while. I don't think anything sounds better than a Mustang. It's got a Rolls-Royce Merlin. So that's kind of my pinnacle airplane. However, I don't own one and I'm not rated in one right now, but that is my favorite.
I love the P-51s. I remember as a kid growing up, my dad used to take us to all the air shows, Edwards Air Force Base, and just you name it. And we were, as the Thunderbirds, the Blue Angels, looking at the Mustangs, the people doing the stunts, just loved going through all that. And, for the longest time, like, I want to fly a jet. What does it take to fly a jet? Obviously, I didn't take that path, but it still always interests me. But one thing I found out over time, do you actually have to have perfect vision?
No, you don't. And I don't have perfect vision. I wear glasses when I fly. And there's corrective surgeries that you can do. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm still young and healthy and I would be afraid of any, adverse side effects. So I'm putting that off till my eyes get bad enough where I want to take care of it. Mm-hmm. But no, you don't have to have perfect vision. I'm not sure how the military looks at that stuff. That may take into account more. But as a civilian, you can wear glasses. You can wear contact lenses. There's ways to fix that.
Okay, because I think it might have been military that I heard that in. Because I'm like, what would it take for me to fly jets?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, you have to have perfect vision. I'm like, well, how long does perfect vision last? So I didn't know if that was a myth or not. So I wanted to ask you that.
Ruben, you could be a civilian jet pilot.
So what would it take for me to get into a jet?
Well, you got to go through the process. You got to start with little Cessnas or whatever. You got to learn a little piston-powered airplane or helicopter, whatever your choice is. And then it's a natural buildup. It's a natural progression. So you get your private pilot license, you turn it into a commercial pilot's license, and you keep adding on those certificates and ratings and experience, and you fly more complex aircraft as you do that. Nowadays, technology's gotten to a point where these manufacturers are making these small or VLJs, very light jets, that are more affordable and readily available to people who want to just fly a jet. There's examples of those all over. The process is absolutely doable. You could start tomorrow, and if you really put your time and energy into it, and there's no doubt in my mind, in a year, you'd be a pretty accomplished pilot. There's people that do it in 6 to 9 months. It's how much time and how much money you're going to throw at it, like anything.
Yeah. My father-in-law he has his own helicopter. He has his own Cessna now, and he flies both. He doesn't take people up in the Cessna because he's still working.
Figuring that out.
But I've
smart.
gone up in the chopper.
Nice.
And he'll fly it down from Alaska. He lives in Borrego and he lives in Alaska, so he kind of splits time there.
Yeah.
And he's flown the helicopter down. I mean, obviously it's a really long trek.
That's a serious trip. In a helicopter. Yep. Have you done that trip with him?
I haven't done that with him. He just flew me around in Alaska once.
Yeah.
I mean, beautiful country from a helicopter.
I don't know if there's any better place to fly than Alaska.
Yeah. But let's dive into what I really want to talk about. So growing up, I just learned you were part of the team for Maverick. And growing up, Top Gun is, if someone says, what's your favorite movie? I have a lot of favorite movies, but Top Gun's the one that's always my go-to. Like, I just love that. Everything about that movie. That's why, as a kid, I'm like, how do I fly a jet? Like, they made volleyball playing look cool in jeans. I mean, you look at it now, it's a little bit cheesy, but still, it was just a thing. So talk to me about this movie. This movie's coming out. It's probably the most anticipated thing for me and almost everybody else. And I've looked at the behind the scenes. I've looked at everything, but like, what are we going to expect? Just talk to me about it.
I've seen the movie twice and I can't wait to see it again. The trailers are a very good representation and the behind the scenes of what you can expect. You can expect a thrill ride. You can expect to be on the edge of your seat. You can expect to maybe shed a tear. It's an emotional story. The story is actually incredible. You can expect to laugh, and you can expect to feel the intensity and a natural buildup throughout the movie. So when you get to that end, I have friends that are like, man, I was sweating. Like, that really got me going. And that's cool stuff. That's fun stuff. So the movie's a thrill ride. You're going to love it.
And how is it working how's it working with Tom Cruise?
Tom is one of my favorite actors, but the best part about Tom is not only how much of a professional he is with his trade. I mean, literally, he strives for perfection in every aspect of his life, including fitness, mental health, and especially perfecting the art of entertaining the world. He just loves that. The best part about Tom is how he instills that on the people around him. He's extremely motivating. I feel motivated just being around him, honestly, but he's really good at teaching and assisting and getting everybody around him on his level. And that's, I feel like, what we had to do on a movie like Top Gun Maverick. One of my favorite memories is in the beginning of the movie, pre-production. He gave us a little speech. I mean, he talked to us all the time, but there's one in particular I remember. And he basically was saying, look, we're almost at a disadvantage here. We're making a sequel to an iconic historic film, a sequel. Furthermore, we've waited 30 years because there needed to be a story worth telling. You've heard him say that. Mm-hmm. There's absolutely a story worth telling here. We also needed the technology to tell it, and we didn't have that until now. But what he said was we needed to obtain a level of perfection that had not been obtained in the past. And that resonated with me, especially in my trade, aerial cinematography. We're talking about Top Gun Maverick. Mm-hmm. We needed to not just set the bar, we needed to blow right through it and show the world something they've never seen before. That was our goal. So he does a really good job getting everybody to understand the gravity of what we were doing. And that's very motivational. So that's one of my favorite things about him.
That's what I love hearing is that, you hear stories about actors and how they are consummate professionals or they're just great with the fans. And you hear both sides. There's the good and then there's the bad. But I've always heard great things. And sometimes people could take things out of context as like, what I've heard is when Tom's on stage in the theater, he's like, we're all business. Let's not waste anyone's time. Let's not waste studio time. Let's not waste the employees' time. Let's make sure that we're doing what we're doing. And I just love hearing that. And I love hearing stories that reinforce that.
I'll tell you, every day I had on set with him, which was the course through Top Gun, you're absolutely right. There's no time wasted, but that's a great thing, right? We only have a finite amount of time in life in general. But when you're making a movie, you can't make a movie forever. It costs a lot of money. So yeah, down to business. Let's make this happen. Let's make this great. Love that.
So did all the actors get to go up there and fly in all these jets? I mean, I saw some of the stuff on the BTS. Everything's
real. They're all in there. And a cool thing that happened was, and this was heavily driven by Tom and Joe Kosinski, our director, but I'm so thankful that Paramount went along with it because this cost a fortune. So from the beginning of when this movie was becoming a real thing, we knew that the actors were going to be in the aircraft. They were going to be in there. Now, you can't just stick anybody in an F-18 and go pull 7.5 Gs and rip through canyons and think they're going to feel great. Mm-hmm. Like, that's going to make you sick. It's going to mess with you. If you're not used to it, it's a bit of a muscle memory. So Tom put together a training curriculum, which basically took our cast and made them into pilots. And a few of them actually have gotten their licenses out of it. But the neat thing is I got to do this training process with the cast with my dad, and still the help of my dad. And obviously he's a hero of mine, and getting to work on an iconic movie like Top Gun with my dad, who is the one who got me here in the first place, that was really special. But what we did is we started them in Cessna 172s, basic Cessnas, learning how to talk on the radio, how to take off, how to land, how to fly the aircraft, where to put your eyes, where to look at things. That was just the intro to aviation, right? Give them the bug, let them look natural and fly the aircraft. And they did great. We got them to a point where they weren't getting sick anymore, or as much, I should say, and feeling comfortable, we graduated them into the next aircraft. Next aircraft, our friend Chuck Coleman ran this part of it. It was an extra 300 aerobatic airplane capable of pulling 8 Gs. Now, 8 Gs feels like a car is running over your chest. Like it's insane the amount of pressure you feel. And the blood drains out of your head so quickly. If you're not doing the correct maneuver to keep it there, you're going to pass out, which never looks good on camera. And they shouldn't be doing that. So we put them in this extra 300, and this was their G tolerance training. Again, muscle memory and physical fitness and learning all of these effects, physiological effects of flying. High roll rate, just getting tossed to a point where we got them so comfortable that they were ready to move on yet again. And we put them in an L-39. An L-39 is a really cool jet. It's Czechoslovakian built fighter trainer, imported into the US, readily available. But now they're going to go pull Gs and maneuver in their first jet platform. So that was really cool. And once they got comfortable there, and that was run by my friend Randy Howell with the Patriot Jet Aerobatic team. Once they were good there, they got in the F-18s. And by the time they got in there, they looked like pros. Not only that, they were able to focus on delivering an epic performance and not worrying that they were flying at 500 knots through a canyon and pulling 7.5 Gs. So if you think about that whole thing in culmination, imagine the effort that went into making sure this cast was ready to help tell this story. I mean, that's heavy. That's big time.
That's a commitment.
Yeah.
Like, I'm spinning out. So that's why I'm geeking out about this. Isn't supposed to be a podcast about the movie in general, but like what you do and the power of this. Anyway, super cool, and I just can't wait to see it. And I
can't wait to see it again.
Let's talk about life lessons of flying. How do some of the lessons you've learned apply to your life, and how can we instill this in some of our listeners or future pilots and the youth that's coming up?
That might be one of the best questions I've ever gotten asked about in my career. I've never gotten asked that before. There's two things that I've learned from aviation that I put into my normal day-to-day life just as a human being. And they're pretty simple. One of them is my job, or one of the pieces of advice my dad gave to me is I need to fly with as many people as possible. Different pilots. When I was just a co-pilot in private jets, fly with as many captains as you can. When I became a captain, fly with as many co-pilots as you can, different crew members. And what you're doing there is you're learning about how other people do things. And they might not be doing it wrong or the way you would do it, but they're doing it their own way. And that's great. Everybody has their own way they do things. And what you're doing there as an aviator is you're saying, hey, I do that, but I really liked the way you just did that. And then you're going to adopt that and you're going to put it into your own, way that you operate. Well, that's how we fly aircraft. And all the time, and someone might point out something that you did and go, hey, that was awesome. And you'll show them that. And then conversely, somebody might do something horrible and you go, I'll never do that. I can't believe you just did that. Well, that makes you your own aviator. And conversely, in life, I feel like if you open your eyes and you watch people and you learn from people, and by the way, they always say in aviation, if you ever think you're done learning, that's the day you're going to get hurt. Like, we're always learning. It doesn't matter how many hours you have. It doesn't matter how experienced you think you are. You're going to make mistakes. You're always going to learn. So that's something that I think is big time. And I try to do that in my day-to-day life. There's things all the time that I see people do and I go, man, I've been doing it this way and I'm going to do it that way from now on. So I feel like that works perfectly. Another one is I really enjoy, obviously we do these briefs, right? We do briefings that prep us for our mission. Our average briefing time on Top Gun Maverick took 2 hours. There was a giant brief, so we go do it. And then you debrief. Debriefs are really cool. Debriefs are almost as important as a brief. So the lesson that I think fits with just the normal day-to-day life as a human being is in a debrief, we say at the door, we drop our egos. And we're going to walk into that debrief and you should be able to raise your hand and say, I almost killed us, or absolutely did that wrong. And here's what I did. And I'm going to do this next time. And it's really cool to see that happen. And I think a lot of people in life are afraid of admitting their faults and weaknesses and where we screw up. But in a debrief in aviation, they try to teach you that you not only need to learn from that, but the people around you need to learn from that. And unless you fully recognize what you do and you're not afraid to talk about it, you're probably going to do it again. So those are two things, and those are the two things I think about all the time. I've never had that question asked to me, but those are definitely two things that I think apply to my day-to-day life, and people probably don't realize they do it.
I love those lessons. So lesson one, I'm listening and hearing you say is be infinitely curious and don't close yourself off to learning and observing people do the same thing, potentially different, better, not worse, and just learn from that.
Exactly.
It could reinforce how you do something, or it can make you more effective and efficient at what you were doing.
Yep.
I love that. And the second one, this is one of my mantras I try to tell myself all the time, is what I heard was take personal responsibility for everything. Accept the feedback. Be open to feedback. Drop the ego and say, yeah, I did that. And also acknowledge a win. Yeah, I did that. Yep. I love that.
Cool. We all know about the Blue Angels. I'm lucky enough to get to work with some of them. And some of the teams in the past, I don't know if they still use it. We actually got a great speech by one of the Blues on one of the movies I was working on. They have a slogan, and I've used it now in just day-to-day life, but they say, glad to be here. You might have heard me say it a couple of times. In a debrief, sometimes debriefs can be harsh. If you just had a horrible flight and you really messed up, you're going to own it and people are going to let you know you messed up. At the end of that, whoever says that, when you say, hey, but I'm glad to be here, that's like taking, responsibility that, yep, that was horrible, but I'm just glad I'm here and I'm going to make it better. So also another cool thing, and that does stem from some of the Blue Angels and the past bosses of the Blue Angels, but I love that because as bad as something sucks or as horrible it is, there's good in it. And if you see that, you'll climb through it.
No, glad to be here. It's also a perspective shift. I even just said it and I'm like, oh, sometimes I'll say, it's a new day.
Yep.
It's a new day. Let's move on. It's a new day.
Yep.
Right. You're starting over. I like that. That's really cool. So what are questions that people do not ask you? What are things that you want to share that you're like, look, this is something I'd like to talk about. There's some beautiful things that people get to learn more and experience. There's something to look at a jet flying, but what's happening in the cockpit? What's going through your head? Like all of that.
Got my gears turning. When I guess a cool thing that anybody can relate to, because we all love movies and we love TV. A lot of people will watch a movie and we get ingrained in the story, which is what you're supposed to do. We're supposed to get lost in the story. We don't typically sit there and go, how did they get that shot? Or how did they do this? And I definitely don't. I don't want people to do that because I want them to get lost in the story. But if we think about it after the movie or before the movie of how much time and energy goes into every little shot, for what I do for a living, I'm only half the equation. When you watch a movie, let's say Top Gun Maverick, and there's a cool shot of an F-18 dogfighting or flying through a canyon. There's a jet that I'm flying that's chasing them, flying through a canyon and trying to avoid them and rocks and trees and all sorts of fun stuff. But all I'm doing is flying. There's a brave soul sitting behind me in an ejection seat that's operating the camera. So there's another person on board, and we call that position the aerial director of photography and the camera operator. This person does not have control of the aircraft I'm flying. They're seeing stuff going by the cockpit, but they're dug into this monitor with extreme precision and focused, and they're composing a shot. So I think just for the general public, whenever we watch that stuff and we see this aerial perspective or we're riding along with a jet, it's this really cool, well-orchestrated ballet, if you will. And there's this really neat communication that's going on between me and the backseater or me and the camera operator. And it's really neat to hear. And there's some BTS that's coming out that'll they recorded our audio, but it's a unique experience. And it just, it's kind of fun for the general public when they're watching this movie or afterwards to think, man, I can't believe people were there and that's all real and they were doing that. So that's kind of fun for me. My job, is to get the camera in the right spot and make sure the guy sitting behind me can frame up a really awesome shot.
And I'm just looking at it. I've never thought about it. And my noviceness of not knowing this is I thought the camera was just on there. There might have been someone down and you were the pilot and wherever you aimed it, that was the camera. I didn't even think like, oh, there's another guy in there actually operating this thing.
Exactly.
And not paying attention to what's happening. Like he's just like, I trust you, Kevin. Where are you taking me?
I don't know why they do that. I wouldn't trust them. No, it's wild. And by the way, I would absolutely get sick. Like I don't get air sick or boat sick or car sick, but if I sat in the back of an aircraft I was flying, staring at a monitor, I'd be out. So I don't know.
Texting and driving.
If
you're the passenger,
exactly.
Driving. But like I'll be doing a bunch of emails and I'm like, I got to stop for a second.
Right? Imagine doing it at 350 knots, pulling 3 Gs upside down and all over the place. So these guys they're pretty awesome. What's cool is the camera jet, well, even cooler than that, knowing Top Gun Maverick was coming. I've been doing camera jet work for about 10, 11 years. And the technology I used prior to this is very cool, but it didn't cut it to tell this story. And we knew that. So about 2016, I remember the night I came up with the design, but I knew it was killing me. I'm like, I got to build something for this movie. And I also didn't know I was going to work on it, right? We all take leaps of faith. We have these dreams and these visions. And I was like, man, I'm one of the only jet camera pilots. Top Gun Maverick's going to happen. There's a good chance I could work on that. But I got to have something that'll help us really tell that story. And there was one night in particular, I was laying in bed, I was using the old Microsoft Paint program, and I was going through these different jet designs and camera gimbal designs, and I made this image of this jet with this camera mounted on the front. And it was a L-39, which is this Czechoslovakian jet that I was interested in because it was very clean and it allowed the camera to be mounted on the nose and the wings are way behind you. Just a very cool jet and readily available in the US. And I stuck the latest and greatest gimbal, which is typically for helicopters, on the front of this thing. And it looked really cool. And I remember telling my wife at the time, I was like, I'm going to build that. And she's like, yeah, whatever, babe, man, go to bed. And I built it. And we trademarked it and called it the Cinejet. We went through all the testing and FAA testing and proof of concept and everything. And we ended up with this really cool platform. And we used it throughout the movie. It literally made the aerial sequences possible on Top Gun Maverick. And I remember getting the call probably mid 2017. That was the initial call. Hey, Kev, will you fly on the movie? Will you be our jet pilot on Top Gun Maverick? I mean, I'm pretty sure after I hung that call up, I just screamed in my backyard. My neighbors probably thought I was getting attacked. But that was that very pivotal moment when you put a lot of time and energy and finances into something without knowing it's going to happen. And then it happens. And then through there, my role grew on the movie. I went from just the camera jet pilot to being the entire aerial coordinator and responsible for it. But what's cool about the Cinejet is I could fly that jet in any way I want, inverted, rip around canyons, and that camera gimbal is rock steady. And that never existed before. So that's the new technology that allows the viewers to get in the mix. And we see that all the time. And there's in the trailer, I could talk about it. It's not a spoiler, but you watch that shot and you're just dug into the afterburners on this F-18 as it peels out. That's because I'm literally right behind that thing and digging that camera right into those afterburners. That's how we did it.
Wow. I'm just playing over this. So I remember watching the BTS and I see the Cinejet in the video.
Yeah.
So that's you. That is your baby.
That's me.
How's that feel?
It's pretty incredible. I mean, this whole process has been a pinch yourself moment. I think I'm just deeply humbled, and I grew up with this movie. I watched it hundreds of times. I still can't quite believe I got to be a part of it. And so I'm honored and I'm fortunate, and this is probably a pinnacle moment in my career that will live with me forever. So, and to see the BTS and see the product that you created on there as part of it, I don't even know how to describe that feeling.
The pride in the storytelling and the making of it, highlighting all these people like you that made this thing come to life.
Yeah.
And truly, I mean, from that lesson you said your father gave you, you've become your own you. You're not a junior, you're you, and you're doing this.
Yeah, it's funny, my brand. So being a junior, we did work together a lot, which is pretty fun. And he's Kevin LaRosa and I'm Kevin LaRosa. So imagine the confusion on set, always on the radio. Hey, Kevin LaRosa, and both Kevin's answering, and ended up with K1 and K2. So K2 is my Instagram handle, and when I'm on set, a lot of people know me as K2 and sort of become my brand. But that's kind of funny how that sort of evolved. And I've never been, there's a lot of people who are like, oh, I hate being a junior, don't like being a junior. I never minded it. Maybe because my dad's super cool and he's always done what I wanted. Could care less. So that was cool.
There's probably a dynamic with, your dad's clearly your hero. Not everyone has the opportunity to have their father and look at them as a hero. So for you, it wasn't anything other than hey, Dad, I am you, and I'm part of this. So
didn't mind at all.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So let's shift a little bit. You've worked on Marvel movies. What was it? Iron Man that kicked off what the Marvel is now.
Yep.
Right? What's the difference between a Marvel movie and aerial scenes in a Top Gun and things like that?
Great question. The aerial sequences we see in Marvel movies and Marvel Disney movies, They are real aerials, but a lot of times we're shooting Iron Man, and Iron Man's not flying by at 500 knots. So we'll be in a jet platform. I flew camera jet on Iron Man, I think 1 and 2, and you're filming plates. And plates is basically the camera's rolling on sky, and the camera operator whips forward, and then the amazing CG artists go in there and they add Iron Man, and it looks awesome. It looks great. Top Gun Maverick, that was not allowed. There was never a time where we were shooting clean air. It always had to be another aircraft in the shot. Even if there was like an aircraft that wasn't readily available, it had to be an F-18 base, and then CGI was going to just replace the skin. So that's pretty cool. So, the Iron Mans and the Avengers and that stuff was always very, very fun, but it's a make-believe story. There is a lot of CGI, which I think people can see. But there are aerials, and it was always fun. We flew drones and jets and helicopters for the Marvel movies, and we still do. But the difference is, to your question, very heavily practical, real flying, and everything we're seeing on camera in Top Gun Maverick is real, with just slight enhancements. That's the difference.
Cool. Okay. So, what are you working on now? Is there anything that's not released yet? Something down the pipeline that
Absolutely.
we can talk about?
It's actually a big year. We got 3 big features coming out this year. Obviously, Top Gun Maverick. Closely following that, another movie I did with Glenn Powell, one of the actors in Top Gun, and a close friend of mine, is a true story, another Navy movie called Devotion. There's actually a really great book written by my friend Adam Makos about devotion, and this story's going to be very special. It's a true story about some heroic actions of some naval aviators who saw through racism and color and segregation and just saw brotherhood and camaraderie. So there's a very good story in the movie, and it's shot beautifully, and I think the world will love it. And the neat thing is when we got hired to do that movie, they wanted the Top Gun crew. They're like, hey, we want all real flying, real explosions. This needs to be, have the Top Gun vibe, which is pretty fun. And I hope, by the way, that becomes a thing, right? More practical stunts, more real, because I think us as the audience, when we watch movies, we kind of know, right? We can watch something and go, that's real. That's huge. That's crazy. Yeah. And I think Top Gun Maverick, getting people back in the theaters is also going to do that. So this movie Devotion has that theme. It's very real. It's a lot of real flying, real explosions, but it's Korean War era. So we had really neat airplanes. I had Corsairs, like the big radial, the stuff we'd see at air shows, Corsairs and MiG-15s and Sea Furies, and just really neat aircraft that are nostalgic. So that's a fun one coming out, and that should be August, I believe. And then I think later this year, early next year, there's a big action movie coming out I did called The Gray Man. I spent a lot of time overseas for that movie. That was with the Russo brothers. And that'll be a really cool one. I think that's it's Chris Evans and Ryan Gosling. This will be a fun one.
Yeah, I've heard about the title's familiar. I haven't heard about Devotion though, but that sounds like it's one of those that'll make me cry a little bit.
Oh yeah, you definitely get something in your eye in that movie a couple times.
Cool. So, random question just popped into my head. How do you feel like when you're a pilot, you're flying all this around, you're in control, but when you travel, let's say Kevin's taking his family to Bora Bora. Is there a different feeling that you're like, I'm in a commercial jet, I'm surrendering? Something go through your head?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. If you have that love for aviation, you're sort of always paying attention to what's going on. Everywhere from, loading on to watching the cabin crew go through their procedures, the things they got to do. During pushback, I'm sitting there going, I know they're pulling the clearance. I know they're taking off on this runway. And I also feel like, as pilots, we have pretty good spatial orientation. You always kind of know which way is north and south, east, west, and which way the runways face. It's just, I can't help it. So yeah, when I'm on an airline, I don't, bug my family with it or people around me. I'm not geeking out that way, but I'm definitely sitting there and I know where I'm pointing and where we're landing and what runways. It's just stuff you can't help, especially when you love it and you're interested in it. If you're sitting over the wing and you're a pilot and the shape of the wing's changing, they're putting flaps out or putting the speed brakes up, you know it. And it's cool when you look at it and you kind of know what's going on. So yeah, you definitely, I think, look at things a little bit differently, which is cool. Yeah. Although these days, I don't know, man, it's been a lot of work and there's just been this grind and hustle. And I feel like when I'm on an airliner, I just pass out these days, which wasn't my old normal. Man, when we take off, that's my time to catch up.
So you get to enjoy the time off.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have a lot of success coming, and you're now known as the Top Gun crew. Like that's a thing. You've become a thing.
That's pretty cool.
And I hope
that
continues to take you to places from beyond. I know Tom Cruise is doing something in space. I've been hearing some of the rumors.
I heard some rumors too.
I don't know if you get to be part of that, but I hear SpaceX is involved, and who knows what's going to happen. But he really wants to go out there.
Who knows? I don't expect anything less from him, and I also know that whatever he does up there is going to be crazy. It's going to be epic. It's going to be huge. Unfortunately, I don't have any space time. I don't think I have any aircraft that would get me up there.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see what he does.
You know, if there's a chance, I have no doubt that you'll figure it out.
I will try.
You're very precise in being a pilot. There's precision maneuvers, places you need to be, what you're looking at. But how does that balance out with being loose, being fluid, and being able to adapt and move?
It's a good question. Everything we do, we brief to like the nth degree. But what you learn, especially with filmmaking, is you can't live in a box. You have to be able to go out there, and what we like to call it is these moments of opportunity. So what does that mean? That means I'm out in the jet and we're filming a maneuver. We're in where we're supposed to be. We're looking at where we're supposed to be, but all of a sudden something catches our eye and we go, man, look at the sun over there against those rocks. Look at that ray of sunshine coming out of that cloud. Let's go over there, right? That's that little cinematic value that comes to play. And if you just, you can fly precise. That's great. But you need to be able to apply that precision to different places in order to get that creative freedom. If you don't have that creative freedom, you're just stuck, like we said, in that box, and that's the product you're going to end up with. So it's a great question because that is exactly how we fly. And if you heard our conversation when we're flying, there's a lot of things that are happening on the fly. Like, that didn't work. Let's try it this way. You need to be able to do that. And that's what makes it look good.
So don't keep yourself in a box. Be open to getting outside of the box.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's the difference between a pilot and an aviator.
I would agree with that. Yeah. You can apply that to aviation.
And then a follow-up question to that is, let's talk about breath and breathing. I can imagine being up there, or when I'm forcing, I'm like what does that was me holding my breath for my podcast.
It was almost
listeners.
perfect, actually. That's almost what you're supposed to do.
And then being able to breathe through things with the pressure hits or a turn. And how do you apply that to, let's say, life in general outside of the jet?
Well, it's funny what you just did right there. The Navy calls it the Hick maneuver. Okay, and what the Hick maneuver does, it's designed to help us keep the blood in our head. So when we're pulling G's, everything's draining out, right? And everything's being forced down. So we do these Hick maneuvers. And now I've only gotten to ride in Navy jets a couple of times on the movie and after the movie. But mainly they teach you this maneuver to keep you awake. And you almost did it, right? You flex your legs and your butt and your abs and you breathe and you hold that breath. You go, huh, huh, and you have to do these short little breaths, and all that's keeping that blood up there. And I guarantee you, if you don't do it, you're out. Like, you don't even know you're out. You just pass out, and then they show you the funny footage of you drooling on yourself later, and they love that. It's really fun for them. I'm speaking by experience when I went for my ride, but that's what you do. So that's the breathing maneuver that you're training on. That's that physiological effect that you're overcoming.
It's a bracing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
And it's exhausting, by the way. Like, when you land from a flight like that, when our talent or cast landed on Top Gun, you're sweating. I mean, there's air conditioning up there, but they're sweaty, they're tired, you're mentally and physically drained. It's taxing. It's like you just worked out, and you're absolutely sore the next day. In places you'd go to like the gym or CrossFit or something, you do that maneuver, on a flight, you're sore in places you get sore.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I CrossFit, I strength train, and I used to play a lot of different sports. Now I limit myself to certain things, and I just can't afford to go tear something playing basketball.
Of course.
And you get sore from moving left to right. So I can imagine the soreness and what you're clenching and the different things that are happening up there in the cockpit. But that segues into like health and fitness. What is your best way of staying fit for being a pilot?
I think I'm basically an aerial stunt man, if you will. And I feel like or to my colleagues and the people I work for, that I should be physically fit and as healthy as possible. But I feel like, and I think you'd agree with me, when we feel good, we think good. The gym to me is my meditation. I don't meditate. I probably should, but I'm one of those lone wolves at the gym. I go every single morning. I mentioned I got 3 beautiful kids. My time is when it's dark out. I wake up at 4 a.m. I'm at the gym when it opens, and I'm home at 6:30, and we're getting them ready for school. That's my time. That's my hour and a half of focus. I put my music on. I don't work out with partners. I don't want to talk. I just want to go there and I want to push it. And that's my time. When I do that in the morning, and I know everybody can relate to this, you just feel better. I feel more motivated. I feel more driven. I feel like it makes you want to eat better because you're beating yourself up. Why would you want to ruin it? So that's my way of mental and physical health. I lift weights. I combine that with a little bit of cardio, and that's my jam.
It's amazing. I start my day with that. I call it earn the day. That's the mantra. You got to go earn the day, start the day off with it, and then the rest of the day could go wherever it goes. But I foundationally started it. I don't meditate a lot either. Sometimes I do in a little breathing, but the gym is my meditation. Yeah. That's where I get the angst out, the stress out, the conversations, all the stuff.
It's the best place to do it. You know, when you fly, you got to be focused. If you have external stressors, relationship problems or money problems or anything, you have to learn how to focus on just compartmentalizing all that stuff and focusing on what's in front of you right now. Because if you're up there and you're thinking about those things, you're going to miss something. And when you're responsible for other lives, that could be really dangerous. So flying is actually a unique world where, everybody has something. Nobody has the perfect life, right? We all have something, but that's okay. You have to learn when you get to the aircraft and it's time to start pre-flighting and focusing, you shut it off. And you could turn it back on later, but nothing should be getting back in your head for those moments where you're going to be a pilot, when you're going to be flying. It's really interesting to practice that. There's been times in my life where I refused to fly. Anything you got something going on in your life, you don't think you're sharp, it's not the time to be up in the air. And that's okay. And that takes time to figure that to say that, to mention that. It's a responsible thing. But yes, I feel like when I work out in the morning, that it helps me do that and be more focused.
It's amazing. That the self-awareness to say, today I'm not doing this. Like if more people, if I even did that, like, you know what, right now I shouldn't have this conversation. Right now I should just take a walk.
Yeah.
Right now I should not do this. There's times where I'm not painting today. I'm not in the right headspace.
Absolutely.
So that's good.
Cool. That's how that works.
Yeah, man. How do you navigate the differences between, let's just call it this life of speed and thrills and precision, and then coming back to the world where it's much slower, more chaotic, not as precise?
That is a very interesting question. I don't know if there's an exact science to it, if you will, but once you're in there and you've experienced that visceral thrill ride and you're low to things and close to things and flying that fast, it is pretty exciting. And it does stick with you. And you're living this very fast-paced, energetic, yet precise and highly coordinated life. And then, the next day you're braiding your daughter's hair and watching cartoons. It's interesting. And I feel like, it kind of humbles you in a way. Like my kids, in a way, make me remember that I'm vulnerable and that I'm not above anything. I can be hurt. I can, if you get cocky or arrogant, you could screw up. So it's almost the opposite. Instead of me trying to integrate back into normal life, I try to live as though my normal life is that. And when I'm going to work, that is a very special, non-standard life that I get to maybe open a door to and play in for a little bit. But you got to come back down. You got to be humble and you got to live real life and have relationships and love and enjoy the world. Because when you're doing all that stuff for work, I feel like I'm just hyper focused and I'm living here, right?
Yeah.
So I try to reverse it. I think real life is the stuff on the ground. And that altar life, that little special thing is where I get to visit.
Yeah. So you get to apply the tunnel vision, but that's not how you operate your day to day.
That'd be a horrible life.
It would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, my brother's a fireman, And sometimes you hear adrenaline junkies, right? You go into the space because you're an adrenaline junkie. Or you're like, I fly jets all day and then I'm racing my motorcycle all day because you can't disconnect from that. But you've got your family, you've got your girls. And
I don't think I disconnected from that as well until I had my girls. There's something about having those little human beings that you're responsible for and who look up to you that sort of grounds you in a, no pun intended. And yes, before that moment, and you're only worrying about yourself and you just have you to worry about, yeah, you're pretty much 110% leaning forward. But having those little girls definitely brought me back a little bit.
So I'm a new dad. My little guy is 15 months old.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's cool.
It's the greatest and most challenging thing ever.
It's wild.
And I could see in your face when you're talking about your daughters. But you're a girl dad.
I'm a girl dad.
Right? Was that coined and made real popular after Kobe, right? I think it got more popular when...
What, that be a girl dad thing?
Yeah, the girl dad.
Yeah, probably because of all the stay-at-home stuff, maybe. Yeah. I mean, I've always embraced it. I wanted a little boy. And we had a little girl, and I loved it because, and you may experience it one day. I'll never know what having a little boy feels like necessarily, but a little girl just, she's wrapped around your finger. She loves her dad. It is so awesome and so powerful. I know teenage years are going to be a little crazy. I don't know what to expect. I know they're going to be a little wild, but one day I hear the girls come back and they just daddy's girls for life. So I'm excited about getting old actually and figuring out what that part of life is like.
Yeah, I know you'll have the tools to definitely navigate that time. I have a son, and we're gonna have another one. We won't know what it's a he or a she. We will not know. So, it's been a beautiful thing, and it's a beautiful journey.
It's an adventure. What's your son's name?
His name is Remy.
Remy.
Yeah.
And 15 months.
15 months old.
Isn't it crazy how I remember when we found out we were pregnant? It's kind of terrifying, right? I mean, you're trying to instill confidence. It's going to be great, but deep inside, we're like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? It's one of those things in life. I tell friends that don't have kids yet, you figure it out. You don't even know how you're going to figure it out. You always do. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty cool in life. Is I didn't know how I was going to figure it out. Second kid, we didn't know. Third kid was a bit of a surprise. And it's just like, you figure it out. It works. It works out.
Yeah. I mean, we don't come with instructions. We figure it out. Don't give unfiltered, unasked for advice is another thing. Like, you want to ask me a question? I'll give you a question, but I'm not going to tell you what to do. Every kid's different.
Yeah.
How old are your girls?
They're 3, 8, and 10, and no two of them are alike.
And how do you have the energy? That's my question every time.
The gym builds energy. I don't know. That's my time. Yeah. Without the gym, I feel it. But we don't have a choice when you're a parent, right?
You just do it.
You got to do it. You don't have the energy, you power through. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, you're a mess and you're tired and the bed's never felt so good. I have to travel a lot for my job. My job is by far easier than being a dad of 3. Mm-hmm. True testament to parents, especially stay-at-home parents. Mm-hmm. Going to work and flying jets, helicopters, and airplanes is super exciting and cool, but it is so much harder and more straining to raise 3 human beings.
So you're the ultimate badass. A fighter pilot, a jet pilot, a helicopter pilot, all the pilots, and a dad of 3. So I'm going to ask you my favorite question. You don't know a lot about me other than, hey, I'm an artist and I've been on this long journey, but all this journey has taken me to the point of living through love and defining that. And the way I define it is that we either operate through love or we operate through fear. And in love, we're responding to the environment. And in fear, we're reacting to the environment. And the purpose of having you on is I want to show how other people are doing it. You're doing it through aviation. I'm about to go lose my mind watching Maverick. But how would you, Kevin, define living a life through love?
That's a great question. Well, if we tailor it towards aviation, which I'm so deeply ingrained in, I feel like at this point in my life, I like helping, teaching, or showing, or recommending a lot of the life lessons that I was given. We talked about those. When I'm at the airport, pre-flighting an aircraft, if I look over and I see a little kid up against the fence with their parents, I'm the kind of person that has to go over there, open the airport gate, and bring him in so the kid could sit in there, because I was once an airport fence kid. Even though my dad was in the business, I couldn't get enough of it. Nothing feels better to me when I can share the cool experiences that I have now with friends, family, and new people. I have 3 beautiful girls, which I'm so lucky to have. And there's no doubt in my mind they'll all be pilots one day on their own accord. I don't really believe in forcing them, but they all, I think, got the bug. We go flying all the time. And that is a whole new level of love and appreciation for just life, of watching them learn and experience things that I got to learn and experience as a kid. So in an aviation standpoint, or in essence with that question, I just want to be able to share what I do with as many people as possible. And even if they don't become pilots, I think that there's a lot of beautiful things about aviation that can be applied in normal day life.
Cool. I think there's a book coming.
Yeah, it would be great. Next episode.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us. Where can everybody find you?
Easiest way is probably on Instagram. It's K2_LaRosa, LaRosa. I try to throw a bunch of behind the scenes stuff from stuff I'm doing on there, so that's pretty fun for the fans. Do have a new website that's getting launched, www.k2larosa.com. And I live in SoCal. I reside in SoCal, and I love it here.
Amazing. Thank you for joining us, Kevin.
Glad to be here.